Probability concepts. First example, dice probabilities. Many board games involve a roll of two six-sided dice to see how far you may move your pieces or counters. So what is the probability of rolling a 7? So we're talking about sums. So we have the first die, and there's 6 sides, and the second die. So a quick chart gives you all the possibilities of adding these two dice up together. And if you look at the chart, you'll see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 ways you can produce a 7 out of a possible 36. So the probability of creating what you're trying to find is 6 times out of 36. I suppose you could even write it, the probability of rolling a 7 is 6 out of 36, and that will reduce to 1 out of 6. So the words out of are important when you're talking about probabilities. You could also write that as an approximate decimal, so that's going to be 0.16, and that goes on forever, so let's round it up to 7, so it's approximately 0.167, or as a percentage, 16.7%. So now let's talk about the complement of an event. So what is the probability that a randomly drawn integer between 1 and 40 is not a perfect square? So let's first find how many times it is a perfect square. So a perfect square would be numbers like 1 times 1 is 1, 2 times 2 is 4, 3 times 3 is 9, then we have 16, 25, and 36. So it looks like we have 6 perfect squares between 1 and 40. So the probability of a perfect square, or event A, will be the number times A occurs, which is 6, out of the number in our total set, which is 40. So the probability of A occurring in a reduced fraction is 3 out of 20. So be careful here. Fractions are exact, whereas when you put it into a percentage, sometimes you're approximating and it becomes less accurate. So the probability of the complement, and the complement can be shown as A prime or as tilde A. The probability of the complement occurring is simply 1 minus the original. So 1 minus the probability of A, which is 3 over 20. And that will get you to 17 over 20. So the probability of it actually occurring, getting a perfect square, is 6 times out of 40, or 3 times out of 20. And it not occurring, or the complement, is 17 out of 20. And you'll notice that those two values add up to 100%. So 17 plus 3 is 20, and that is the third concept that I want to address on this particular slide. So when you add these together, it does equal 1. So 3 over 20 plus 17 over 20 equals 1. And if you put those into percentages, you'll notice that you'll get 100% equals 100%. So there's a 100% chance of something occurring. So you're only measuring two things in this case. So either one thing happens or the other thing happens. There are 3 types of probability: empirical, theoretical, and subjective. Empirical is when you go out into the real world, you do a bunch of trials or tests, and you mark down what those trials tell you. Theoretical is based on knowledge that you have already, and you come up with the probability of something occurring. And subjective is based on previous experience or intuition. And now let's determine some subjective probabilities. Let's estimate the probability that the next pair of shoes you buy will be the same size as the last pair you bought. That's pretty close to 100%. Unless you're a young child, if you're an adult, chances are if you're a size 10, you'll buy a size 10 in your next shoe. So it's nearly 100%. The factors that would drop it to say 95%, 85% would be the brand perhaps of shoe that you're buying, because different brands may shape their shoes differently. You may need a smaller or a bigger size of shoe just depending on how your foot is constructed versus how the brand makes the shoe. All right, in example B, the expansion of a baseball team will win the World Series in the first season. This is actually really close to zero. It would be quite rare that a new baseball team would win the World Series. It's very difficult for an established team to win the World Series, much less a brand new team with all its restrictions on the number of players they can get and the salary levels that they have and the good players that are actually available to them. All right, the next person in number C to enter a certain coffee shop will be male. Well, typically speaking, it's really 50-50 females to males. And so you would have a 50-50 chance. The one thing that might change that would be location. Depending on where that coffee shop is located, you might have more females working or living in that area or more males. So there are different factors that might determine the probability of a male coming into a coffee shop. Thanks for listening.